There we go. Good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know by now, I'm Mike Regan. I'm the Midwest Account Manager for the NEC SL product. And I'd like to thank you and welcome you for taking the time to come and visit with me this morning and listen to the presentation about the SL2100. And why I decided to, after almost a year of the SL2100 being released, why I decided to go through and do another kind of introductory WebEx is because the SL1100 is fast approaching end of life. We shipped our last set of kits out to distribution. We will no longer be manufacturing any kits for the SL2100, or I'm sorry, for the SL1100. SL1100 components will still be out in distribution for a while, so you'll be able to support any installs out there, but for anything new, it should be the SL2100. So that's why I decided to do this kind of discover the NEC SL2100 webinar series again, you know, just to kind of reintroduce the product to you guys, especially those who have been doing the SL1100. All right, so what we hope to do is to in the next 45, 50 minutes or so is get you introduced to the next generation in the SL series, the SL2100. We'll show you the differences between the 1100 and the 2100, and how the 2100 now moving forward will appeal to both to the end users of yours who are both traditional, you know, who just need a traditional TDM system, and it will also appeal to those IT-centric people, the people who are usually more voice over IP oriented. The fact that we're a converged switch helps us do that. All right, and the SL2100 is just a continuation of the innovative technologies that NEC has been creating since 1899. So before even telephones have been invented, we've been playing around in electronics here. So what we'll kind of go over today is product positioning. We'll take a look at the hardware for the 2100, some optional equipment, features. We'll talk a little bit about features and applications. We'll talk about the packages and kits, and then we'll take a look at the support that you guys have for the system. All right. So let's dive in and take a look at the 2100. The 2100 is just an improvement and an enhancement to the old SL1100 system. All right. So why we use the SL line, or why NEC, we're a consistent global market share leader in the SMB market. We make a heavy investment in technology. With the SL line, we're a market value leader, lowest total cost of ownership. We have outstanding sales support. We have outstanding technical support. You'll see when we go through the hardware that it's relatively easy to configure and install. And we have a 5-year standard warranty. And then we'll talk a little bit. I don't know if I can't remember if I have slides in here about programs and promotions. All right. What's new about the SL2100? Kind of at a glance, we've got a new design to the KSU. It's a slot-in design, so it's more of a traditional chassis and blade configuration. Everything slides into the chassis from the front of the chassis. We have some built-in features. 4-port 2-hour voicemail is built into the CPU now, as well as 8 voice over IP ports, you'll see when we take a look at the hardware, there's an Ethernet port on the CPU. That Ethernet port has 8 voice over IP resources built into it. So out of the box, the system is voice over IP ready. Right? 6 door box ports with relays and 3 external page zones can be in one KSU. One of the issues we had with the SL2100 was that if you needed to go to a third door box on the SL2100, you had to add a third cabinet, whether the number of extensions warranted it or not. You had to add another cabinet in order to get door boxes 3 and 4. With the 2100, you can now have up to 6 door boxes, and they can all reside in one KSU or one chassis. Okay? PRI is now a daughter board. All right? It does not take up a slot in the cabinet. It rides on top of a station card. Right? And what's really cool is we now have an optional rack mount shelf is available now. I think it sells for $45. So now the system is truly a rack mountable system. The shelf we had fabricated actually fits the chassis like a glove, and it is vented. It's got the proper ventilation on it to allow the air to pass through and keep the cabinet or the chassis cool. All right. There we go. Some new feature enhancements on the SL2100 CPU auto update. So you can program the system to once a month go out to the NEC server and look to see if there is new firmware. And if there's new firmware, it will download the firmware into the CPU. And then you can schedule it to update itself during that month. This is, by default, it's turned off, and you can leave it off if you want. ACD, we'll talk more about ACD in an upcoming slide, but ACD, we've added what we call agent identifying codes. And these AIC codes allow for agents to be logged into multiple ACD groups simultaneously. Right? We've made some big improvements to PC Pro. We've added this easy edit view, which makes the whole programming process on the SL2100 way simpler. We've added NUC. That is our desktop integration. We'll talk, I think I got slides, we'll talk more about NUC later on, but NUC is our desktop integration, gives you desktop call control, and it gives you presence. So we've added presence to the desktop application. What we do not have yet is CRM integration. CRM integration, should come in version 2 of the 2100. And then we also will be having integration with Lua apps. This is one of my favorites because I can't get anybody to give me what Lua stands for, what LUA stands for, but I can tell you what this means. This means we'll be able to integrate more easily with some third-party applications. The first one that jumps out to me would be property management software for the hotel motel industry. Once we get Lua app integration, which is supposed to be coming in version 1.5, which is, I think, going into field trial next week, you'll be able to integrate with some property management software. All right. Capacity, we've made some changes to the overall capacity of the system, primarily with voice over IP. All right. We now have a total of 128 voice over IP resources available on the system. 8 are built in, and then you would build the rest with voice over IP daughter board and licensing. So that is 4 times the capacity of what we used to have, which means we can now have up to 112 voice over IP extensions and up to 64 SIP trunks running in the system, and you can actually have that going simultaneously. So if somebody wants to build a system with 64 SIP trunks and 112 voice over IP stations, we can do that and run that no problem. We're not limited to the number of resources we have anymore. We've increased the number of SLNet capability. SLNet, we can actually do up to 50 nodes, which means we could theoretically network 50 locations. However, that's not very realistic because we are still limited to a total number of 256 ports in the network. So while we can do more than 5 locations now, it still would have to be less than 50. So, 10, 15, depending on the size of the locations, you could probably even network 20 sites together now with the 2100. And then ACD, we've increased the capacity for ACD. We have a total of 8 ACD groups with 128 agents total. So now a small call center is, or even now a mid-sized call center is more realistic for the 2100. And then lastly is the phones. And the primary change we've made in the phones is in our voice over IP phones. The voice over IP phone is now a large display telephone, and it is a self-labeling telephone, so it does not require a DESI label. The new voice over IP telephone supports gigabit connections, and it has a total of 32 programmable buttons on it. Digital phones are still basically the same. We've made a new design change to them, give them more rounded edge, but we still have 12 and 24 button phones for the as far as the digital phones. And I need to fix this slide. It's still the 2100 will support SL1100 digital phones as well as the SL2100, or I'm sorry, the SL1100 voice over IP telephone. All right. So here's our first look at the cabinet. Cabinet is scalable up to 256 ports. You can have, theoretically, you can run 128 lines with 112 stations and 16 voicemail ports. Right? It is a true hybrid solution. In that it can run, it could be a TDM solution, it could be a voice over IP solution, it could be a combination thereof, which gives you greater flexibility with your end user. And we'll talk about this more later, but it clears up the misconception that voice over IP is an either-or proposition. You can certainly, start off the system as a TDM switch and add voice over IP as needed. If they're voice over IP, remote voice over IP phones, or if you're networking locations together, or if it's just as simple as bringing SIP trunks into the system. All right. Higher capacity for T1 and PRI. I can now do up to 3 PRI circuits in a system, but it is still 1 PRI card per cabinet. 5-year warranty. So we have a 5-year parts warranty on the system. Phones are fully featured. They're both, all my phones, both digital and IP, are full duplex speakerphones with backlit displays. And then we had the UC applications, mobile extension, email notification, Mobility, ACD, NUC, all that fun stuff. And those could be added with a license as needed by your customer. Okay. Here's how the system can grow in a TDM world. In terms of if you're growing it as a digital system. Currently, through a bus connection, I could add 2 additional cabinets. All right. Each one of these cabinets, if you think about it in terms of POTS lines with digital stations, each one of these cabinets are basically 12 lines by 24 stations. All right. So currently in the TDM world, I could grow this to be a 36-line by 72 station system. Coming in version 2, we'll have the ability to add a 4th cabinet, and that'll be connected via the IP connection. So then we would be able to go up to 96 digital stations and 48 POTS lines. All right. System, like I mentioned, is a hybrid solution, so I can run analog, digital, and voice over IP lines, either independently or simultaneously. By the same token, I could run digital, analog, and voice over IP stations, again, independently or simultaneously. All right? So it's a true hybrid solution. But again, I want to reiterate that we have now up to 128 voice over IP resources on the system, which gives us a greater flexibility to grow the system as a pure IP solution, if you want. And sometimes it may even make more sense to, if somebody is looking for a 50 or 60 phone solution, it may make more sense, depending on their network infrastructure, as doing that as a voice over IP system. Because you can do up to, like I said, up to 112 voice over IP phones, but that can all be done out of one cabinet. All right, when you do voice over IP. And so instead of adding multiple cabinets when you do voice over IP, you can do that all out of one cabinet. In fact, I did a quote for somebody not too long ago where they wanted 70 phones on a system, and they insisted that they wanted it to be a digital phone system. But I quoted it out both ways for this particular reseller, and it turned out that the TDM solution for 70 phones was about $600 more in cost than it was to do the 2100 as a pure voice over IP solution with the 70 extensions. So again, it just shows the flexibility of the SL2100. All right. Our main KSU kit is initially configured 0 by 0 by 0. And again, it's a wall or rack mount design. There is an optional rack mount shelf available. 4 voicemail ports built into the system. Storage time in the built-in voicemail is about 2 hours. 8 voice over IP resources built into the Ethernet port. All right, and that same Ethernet port you would use for PC programming. There's 4 expansion slots on the cabinet. We talked about the ability to add 2 additional KSUs. And the benefits of the new design, you no longer are opening up the cabinet to put cards in. Everything is a slot-in design or a slot-based design. So now, to use network speak, we're now dealing with the chassis, and we're sliding blades into the chassis for growth. All right, so slot-based design, cards are no longer being stacked, so it makes it easier for maintenance on the system. All right, there is a picture of the SL2100 mounted in a rack. This is actually the main KSU with an expansion KSU, and it shows how it cleans up the installation. interesting part about this picture, this was actually a picture taken during the field trial process of the SL2100. So this shelf is actually not our shelf. Our shelf will fit a little more snug, so you won't have the gaps along the edge here, and our shelf is vented to allow the proper airflow through the cabinet. All right. Here is our CPU, and again, 4-port 2-hour voicemail built in, 8 voice over IP ports built in right here to the Ethernet port. There's an optional voice over IP daughter board, which is, you see on top here, that gets installed on top of the CPU, and then the voice over IP daughter board Ethernet port becomes the active Ethernet port on the system. And then there's also an optional expansion daughter board that actually mounts underneath the CPU, and you would take these knockouts out for expansion cabinet 1 and expansion cabinet 2. All right. Here is our voice over IP daughter board, again mounted on top. This takes the number of available resources from 8 to 16, and then becomes the medium for the storage on the expansion license. So you can expand the system in 16 port increments or 16 resource increments via the use of licensing, and ultimately you can expand it to 128 voice over IP ports. All right. The voice over IP ports on the system will support NEC voice over IP telephones. They will support third-party SIP telephones. They will support SIP trunks. They will support networking of multiple locations, as well as the Mobility app. All of these, with the exception of this first bullet point here, these other ones do require additional licenses to the system. All right. Here is our digital station card. Our digital station card, we've changed a little bit from the past. We still support 8 digital stations, but on this same card, we also add 2 analog station ports. These analog station ports have relays on them, so they are the relay. So these are the ports you would use for door boxes. All right. We also have 1 audio input for external, for background music on hold, and then we have 1 audio output for connecting to a paging system, an external paging. And then on top here is a connection for our trunk daughter boards. So either the 3-port CO trunk card or the PRI card would mount on top of this digital station card. So, you know, old habits die hard. You know, I still call this the 8-port digital station card, but, you know, technically we call this an 8x2 multi-line terminal card. All right, so it'll support both digital stations as well as 2 analog stations. But this is also, these are the analog connections you would use for connecting door boxes. Okay. We then also have an 8-port digital or 8-port analog station card. So it supports analog stations. This is purely for single line telephone type devices. It will, I wouldn't recommend plugging our door boxes into this because these cards do not have the relays on them. So this is for, you know, purely single line telephone or credit card readers or things like that. I'm going to skip this card for a second and I'll come back to it. We also have a PRI card. PRI card is now a daughter board, so it mounts on top of the station cards. And we now increase the number of PRI circuits to 3 per system, but it's still 1 PRI card per cabinet. And then my CO trunk card is in a little change. It's now a 3-port CO trunk card, and this supports, you know, POTS lines And again, it is a daughter board, and it mounts on top of a station card. Now this card we skipped here, the zero expansion card, which I actually think is in our price list, and we call it a CO expansion mounting card. There is confusion with this card. A lot of people think because of the name that it's a, this card is required every time you put a CO card in the system, and it is not required. This card is only required when you have more CO cards than you have digital station cards in the system. An example would be 9 lines and 16 stations. Right? With the 16 stations, you would have 2 of the digital station cards installed, but you need 3 of the CO trunk cards. So 2 of those 3 CO trunk cards can go on top of the digital station card, and that leaves 1 CO trunk card with no place to put it. Well, you would use the CO mounting expansion card. You would mount the daughter board on this card, and then this card gets installed into a slot in the cabinet, and it provides, it provides the mode for the CO trunk card to run on. So the expansion card, the zero expansion card, or what we call the CO mounting card, is only required for when you have more trunk cards than you do station cards in the system. All right. Then we have this bus card, this expansion bus card. This goes onto the CPU. It mounts underneath the CPU card and adds your ports for expanding to, for the first expansion cabinet and the second expansion cabinet. All right. This card also has a couple of other functions to it. All right. This card increases the number of voicemail ports from 4 to 16. Does not increase the storage, just increases the number of voicemail ports. So you can have a 4-port voicemail, or if you add this card to the system, to the CPU, you now would then have a 16-port voicemail card, or voicemail system, all right? And there's also built-in modem into this card, okay? This is the card that mounts onto the CPU in the main cabinet. Then we have this expansion KSU bus card. This card goes into the chassis that will be the expansion chassis. So this card mounts into the area or the slot on the cabinet where a CPU would normally go. All right, so this in sense becomes, this receives the signal from the main cabinet. So this card, this bus card goes in the main cabinet, and that is the transmitting signal, or transmits the signal. This bus card goes into what would be your expansion chassis, and it goes in where the CPU card would go, and this would receive the signal from the main KSU, or the main chassis. All right. And this slide just kind of shows the chassis, the slot assignments in the chassis. Okay, this is the main cabinet down here. So we got our CPU card in here. Voice over IP daughter board is installed, as well as that expansion bus card. And then you have slots 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right up here is my expansion chassis, and instead of the CPU card, we have that other expansion bus card that goes in here in where the CPU card would go, and then you have your slots 5, 6, 7, and 8. The other thing that I want to point out on this is slot 4. Slot 4 is only used for the 8-port analog extension card or the CO trunk mounting card. The digital station card, the 8x2 digital station card, will not work in slot 4. The 8-port digital station card can only go in slots 1, 2, and 3. All right, so slot 4 is purely for the analog station card or the CO trunk mounting card. All right. InMail, we talked about how you can increase the number of ports on the InMail. You can also increase the storage time, and you increase the storage time through the use of the SD cards. So we have one SD card that takes it from 2 hours to 15 hours storage time, and then we have a second SD card that will take it from 2 hours to 120 hours. You will see when we talk about our packages and kits that all of our 2 quick start kits include the 15-hour storage card in the kits. All right, so the SD cards expand the storage time for the InMail. The bus card takes it from a 4-port to a 16-port. Okay, and that's what we talk about here. The expansion bus card expands to the InMail to 16 ports. We also have a couple of bullet points here. Cascading notification and the Find Me, Follow Me feature is now built into the voicemail. And I know we have it listed under the expansion card, but the 4-port 2-hour voicemail built into the CPU already has message cascading as well as Find Me, Follow Me built in. So those are built into the system. All right. Then we have our email integration license, which the system does come with a 60-day free trial version. Email notification, it sends out an email notification to the subscriber that they have a voicemail box. It also attaches a WAV file copy of that message, and caller ID information is in the subject line. So they can do a quick visual and, see by caller ID and rate, by a quick visual who needs to be listened to first and who gets a call back first, all that fun stuff, right? The email integration license is $300, and once that license is installed in the system, you have it for every mailbox on the system, whether they use it or not, all right? And here's a quick look at our new design on the terminals. We got kind of a rounded edge now. Gives it a sleeker, sportier look, as it were. 3-line 24-character LCD display. We have our LED message waiting indicator up at the top. That's actually a tricolor. It'll do red, green, and orange. We have our 4 soft keys for navigating or helping to navigate through the menu, the soft key menu, as well as our programmable buttons. And we have both a 12-button and a 24-button flavor of digital phones. It is a backlit display. All right. And then we have our 4 fixed function keys. We have our speaker button and our hold button down here. And then these buttons here, again, are for the use of the menu on the display to help navigate through the menu. There is a built-in wall mount on our digital phones as well. You fold in the legs and the wall mount is there, and you just mount, you can go ahead and mount these phones on the wall. Here's the front view that just shows the different LEDs as well as kind of a blow up of the different feature buttons that we have, as well as the menu cursor key down here. And then this is our voice over IP telephone. Again, you got your message waiting indicator up top. This is a DESI-less phone, and here are your programmable buttons. And you see the labels for the button appear on the LCD screen. All right, there's 8 buttons on the face here, and then we have a scroll key. So you have 4 pages of these buttons that you can scroll through and see You know, so if you have hotline buttons or DSS keys, you can have your line buttons appear on here as well. So you have up to 32 buttons, programmable buttons for feature keys. Then at the bottom of the display, you still have your standard 3-line 24-character LCD display, just like you do on your digital telephones. And then you have your 4 soft keys for navigating through the menu, as well as the same fixed function keys and your speaker and hold button, and then your menu cursor keys here as well. The legs on this phone will fold in as well. However, this one does not have a built-in wall mount. We have a separate wall mount for this phone because we need a standoff from the wall to make a gentler bend radius for the Ethernet cable coming out of this phone. All right, and just like the digital phone, here's our front view that shows the fixed feature keys and their associated LEDs, as well as your menu cursor key down here. All right. As I mentioned earlier, the SL2100 will support SL1100 phones. So the SL1100 phones will work on the 2100. All right. And then that's both digital and IP phones. All right. 2100 phones will not work on the SL1100, but the 1100 phones will work on the 2100. So if you have an install out there with with an 1100 and they'd like to take advantage of some of the additional features on the 2100, you're basically at that point just changing out cabinets and the voicemail card if need be. All of their phones from the 1100 will work on the 2100 system. Okay. In terms of cordless phones, we do have the digital DECT cordless phone. It's actually a new design of the digital DECT. Runs at 1.9 gigahertz, so it will fly underneath the radar of Wi-Fi at locations. It's got 8 programmable feature key, backlit display, and keypad. You can extend the range with the use of repeaters. You put a maximum of 8 DECT handsets on the system and a maximum of 6 repeaters. You can also pair this with a desktop phone. I really only like to use this phone if somebody just needs one cordless phone, all right? And for this reason, the relationship between the handset and the base unit is 1-to-1. All right, and it's the same with repeaters. So it's one of these transmitting units or base units and one repeater or one group of repeaters per handset. So if you start getting into multiple handset applications, you then have to start worrying about where you place the base units, and then if they need repeaters to extend the range, then you have to add the appropriate amount of repeaters, and those repeaters only work with one extension, and it can get to be pricey. So in the case of where there's multiple cordless phones, I prefer the ML440. All right, the ML440 is our IP DECT cordless phone, and it consists of the ML440 handset and the AP20 access point. And this just shows you all of the different features and what the handset looks like. Key thing I like to point out is there's a charging slot in the back of the base unit so that you can keep an extra battery or charge an extra battery. So it really gives you full day use. But what I really like about this is the AP20 access point. You can register multiple handsets to multiple access points and multiple handsets to one access point. So instead of that 1-to-1 ratio we saw with the digital DECT phone, now your ML440 handsets share access to this access point, and it gives you some more flexibility. So you can put multiple AP20s, actually up to 20 AP20s in a facility, and you could register up to 30 handsets to each AP20. Each AP20 will support 8 simultaneous calls in a multi-cell application. If it's a single cell, it'll support 10 calls simultaneously. All right. Each one of these access points will cover about 100 feet radius, omnidirectional from the access point. So going back to the area of a circle, which is pi r squared, that means the access point will cover roughly about 31,000 square foot. All right, and then, like I said, you could place multiples of these throughout the facility, and there'll be seamless handoff as the handset moves throughout the facility. And again, the reason I like to use this, especially in a multiple handset application, even if it's a TDM situation, you have there is 8 voice over IP resources built into the cabinet, so you really don't have to add, or shouldn't really need to add, any voice over IP resources to use these phones. And at that point, it becomes an easier, easy addition to the system, especially for multiple handset. So I prefer the ML440, especially if you're looking at a multiple cordless situation. All right, we still have the 60-button DSS console. They take up a digital station port, maximum of 12 per system. We have our analog door box. It's the same door box that we've had for going on 15 years now. And that plugs into the analog ports that are on the digital station card. All right, we have our wireless headset adapters. We have the wireless headset adapter for digital telephones. And then we have, available only through Plantronics, is the cable for voice over IP telephones. That's only sold through Plantronics. Both of these wireless headset adapters work with Plantronics wireless, and it eliminates the need for the handset lifter. And then there's a wall mount for voice over IP telephones that we already talked about. All right. Features. Again, I know I've been, this is like the 4th time we've seen this, but I can't stress this enough. 4-port, 2-hour voicemail built into the system. 8 voice over IP resources, built into the system. So the system is voice over IP ready out of the box. CPU auto update feature, up to 6 door phones in 1 chassis. We now have 50 department groups as opposed to 32. We have 6 SIP trunk profiles, which is up from the 2 that we used to have. 8 ACD groups with 128 agents. And then a more robust SLNet feature. So we can now do more than 5 locations, 10, 15, 20 sites are in play for the SLNet feature. All right. The other thing that kind of gets lost in translation is our system is very user-friendly. While we do have PDFs on the website of our phone user guides, as well as an interactive user guide on the SL2100 product website, really there's tutorials or the system will guide the user through the use of the phone, all right, either visually through the menu or audibly, like for instance when they get into their voicemail, they'll be guided what buttons to push in order to record and send a message, or to do maintenance on their voicemail, i.e. setting or changing their password. and recording their greeting and things like that. And there's actually 3 different greetings that can be recorded into their personal voicemail box. All right. We also have a built-in recordable message on hold. That could be either you record it as if you were recording a greeting, or you can upload a WAV file into the message on hold. So it eliminates the need for a third-party on hold device. We have silent monitor and barge in, as well as voiceover, which is our whisper page. 32 conference circuits, so there's plenty of conference call circuits on the system, as well as mobile extension are the twinning feature. All right. In terms of voicemail, we can have up to 128 subscriber mailboxes, 8 company greetings with 8 dial-by-name directories, and I need to double-check on this. I think that's up to 16 with the SL2100, but I have to check the manual on that. 32 routing mailboxes, conversation record. You could record a conversation in your personal mailbox. I get calls all the time from dealers asking about call recording on the system. And as we know, call recording devices are expensive to automatically record every phone conversation. And then you have to then search through on a server by caller ID and extension number, all of those different recordings. With conversation record, this is a manual setting. You have to program a button on the extension where they could start a recording, and they could record the conversation into their personal mailbox. And then if they have email notification, which I would recommend, once they're done with that recording, an email gets sent out with the WAV file copy of the recorded conversation, and then they can store that. They can name it and store that wherever. So if they're looking to use conversation record, you may want to consider the large SD card. And this becomes kind of a poor man's way of doing call recording on the system. And I use poor man's with my tongue planted firmly in cheek. It just becomes a more affordable way to record important conversations. All right. We also have message center mailboxes and keys, so you can have guest mailboxes on the system, mailboxes that do not have a phone or a hard extension attached to them. And then you can have those guest mailboxes appear as message center keys on different phones. All right, so then those keys will light up when there's a message left in one of the guest mailboxes. Parking page built in, caller ID return call with remote notification, or actually I said that backwards. We have remote notification with caller ID return call. So the system will call a subscriber's cell phone to let them know that they have a message, and then they can listen to that message, and then they're given the option of returning that call based on the caller ID information that's attached to that message, right? So we do an email integration or email notification is available. That's with the license. Find me, follow me, and cascading notification is built in. The expansion card is not required. So I got to fix that slide. Find me, follow me, and cascading are built into the voicemail. It had the ability to import and export WAV files, as well as audio and visual guidance for the end user for navigating through their personal mailbox. All right. Mobile extension. There are 4 mobile extension licenses built into the system. All right. Incoming calls can ring the desk set and the mobile phone virtually simultaneously. What this is a kind of a fancy-dancy way of doing off-premise call forwarding, right? Again, there's 4 mobile extension licenses built in. So you can, out of the box, you can integrate 4 cellular phones, and those cellular phones will work just like a single-line telephone on the system. Where this differs from off-premise call forwarding is there is some call handling capability. So once that call hits the cell phone, they can, the user can put a call on hold, can park a call, can transfer a call back to another user on the main system. They could do intercom calls, they could do voiceover or paging. You know, anything they can do with a single line telephone, they'll be able to do with their mobile phone, right? They'll be able to also make outbound calls when they're away from their office, but because they're going through the system, the caller ID information that goes out is the system caller ID and not their cell phone caller ID, right? It is strongly recommended that you use either SIP trunks or PRI circuit. Reason being, a couple of them. This does use 2 trunks and a conference circuit when it does that, so you need a trunk for the call coming in and a trunk for the call going out to the cell phone, right? And then it also does use some DID capability on this. So while you can use this with POTS lines or analog trunks, it is recommended that you use SIP trunks or PRI so that you can take full advantage of the feature of the system through using DIDs. All right? Then we have U-Mobility. U-Mobility is the app, and it is this is a voice over IP application. All right? You see up here I say it's U-Mobility for Android. That's because the current version of U-Mobility is not compatible with iOS 10 or iOS 11. All right. We are beginning next week a field trial on what we're going to call the NEC ST550. This is going to be the new app, and I just found out that the plans are that it will still be a free app. Does everything that U-Mobility does. And we'll add video calls as well, or the capability of doing video calls. And that's going into field trial next week, and then that will be compatible with iOS 10 or iOS 11 as well as the Android. But the current version of U-Mobility we recommend just for Android or iOS 9 and below. It does require the use of the third-party SIP station license, as well as a voice-enabled Wi-Fi ready device and the Wi-Fi network. This was designed to be a Wi-Fi client. Now, we did get ahead of ourselves midway through the release of the SL2100, in that we've added a feature to the SL series that we call NAT traversal to a third-party SIP device. And what that allows for is you could now theoretically take your U-Mobility app off-site and use your cellular provider's 3 and 4G network to connect back up to the system. But there are a couple of danger areas, actually one big danger area for doing that is if they do not have, if the end user does not have unlimited data from their cell provider, boy, are they going to get quite the bill, you know, at the end of the month if they do a bunch of these type of calls. So if they're going to use their 3 or 4G network from their cell provider, they need to make sure that they have an unlimited data plan from their cell provider, because these calls could get expensive, right? However, you can still take it off-site and log on to somebody else's Wi-Fi and make calls that way, all right? You know, that's kind of the bad news with that. The good news is that it is virtually impossible to accidentally make a call using U-Mobility. All right? There are several warning boxes that pop up when you're making a call via U-Mobility. Are you sure you want to do this? So it's pretty much impossible to accidentally dial somebody using the Mobility app, because it does ask for the user to okay to proceed. All right, so the accidental dialing using Mobility to run and running up the phone bill, really not an issue. All right, so and then this is the app that goes onto the phone, creates a SIP single line extension, or puts a SIP single line extension on the telephone, and then this will be a voice over IP extension on the system. All right. So that's Mobility, and stay tuned for updates to Mobility. ACD, again, 8 groups with 128 agents max. Again, a 60-day free trial. Agent log in and out. Agents can be logged into multiple groups with the use of AIC codes. All right. And there's also, I didn't put on the slide, we also have a supervisor position. There's one supervisor position in each ACD group, and on what we call emergency call. So if an agent in an ACD group is on a troublesome call or is having issues that they can't answer, they can place an emergency call to their supervisor of the group, and then the supervisor could then be conferenced in to join the call and clear up any issue for the agent and whomever they're on the phone with. All right. Here is the display, what shows on the display when using ACD, number of calls in queue, the line that's been in queue the longest, and how long that has been in queue. All right. Then networking. You can network systems together through the use of our SLNet license. There's a little change to the SLNet license for the 2100 in that the license provides 8 channels across the network. So out of the box, it's 8 channels. So each system in the network would require the SLNet license, and it gives them 8 channels of connectivity across the network. If they need more than 8 channels of connectivity across the network, you just add another SLNet license, and it increases in increments of 8. All right. When you have a network solution, you can have centralized trunks, you can have centralized voicemail, you can do intercom calls across the network, you can transfer calls across the network. You can even have BLF indication across the network. So I can have on my phone in site A, I can have a BLF key for a key person in site 4 or site B or C or whatever. All right? This does require a managed network in between the locations. All right? So there needs to be a managed network in place in order for this to work properly. And again, you can network up to 50 sites, although 50 is not realistic because the maximum number of ports within the network cannot exceed 256 ports, and that's your totals of lines and stations. All right? And then we have your hybrid applications where you can run both TDM and voice over IP, either independently or simultaneously. And here we're showing we have a digital station, we have a digital system set up at the office. We got one mobile extension user, or not mobile extension, one Mobility user, and then we have a couple of voice over IP telephones set up at remote sites. Right? It gives you greater flexibility and lowers the cost. And using it as a hybrid solution clears up one of the biggest misconceptions about voice over IP out there, is that voice over IP is an either-or proposition. In other words, you're either using a TDM solution or a traditional telephone system or you're using a voice over IP solution. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't have to be an either-or proposition. You can build with the SL2100, you can build a traditional TDM solution, and then as they need voice over IP, as your customer needs voice over IP, you can add voice over IP capability to the system. In fact, it's already there with 8 voice over IP resources built in. But if they need a remote phone at the business owner's home office, you could throw one on there. If they decide they want to go, move from POTS lines to SIP trunks, it's a real easy transition. You're no longer forklifting the system in order to do voice over IP. All right, so that's really one of the main benefits of a hybrid type solution such as ours, is you can add voice over IP as the customer needs it, if they ever do or not. And you're not changing out a cabinet, you're not switching out all the phones. All right, if you're running SIP trunks, you can have digital phones and voice over IP phones on the system. If you have voice over IP phones and POTS lines, that's okay too. So it just overall flexibility with the fact that it's a hybrid solution. All right, so just wrapping up, in terms of features, we have user-friendly features, powerful InMail features to help drive business, and affordable UC features to take your customer into the new age. All right, built-in voicemail, built-in voice over IP ports, the ability to do voicemail to email, with the email integration, mobile extension and Mobility, the way to incorporate cellular phones on the system, as well as networking. All right. Support resources. We have our product website at NECSL2100.com. All right. This is a great site not only for you all, but it's a great site for your end users. All right, because what is on this site is product information, feature and application information, our brochures, our interactive user guide. What is not on this site is programming information, manuals, pricing information, and where to buy. I mean, we don't list dealers that sell the system. There is a button that they could push to find out more about who sells our system, but what that does is they fill out their information that gets sent to sales support, and then sales support contacts the appropriate account manager for making sure that that particular end user gets matched up with a reseller or resellers in their area. All right, so there is absolutely nothing on this website that would hinder your ability to sell a system. It'll only enhance your ability to sell the system. All right, here's our packages. I got some slides out of order here. I got to redo this. Our value packages, we have our 2 quick start kits. All right, quick start kits are configured the same way. 3x8x2 KSU with a 4-port 15-hour voicemail and 8 voice over IP resources. All right, and then it's a matter of each quick start kit comes with 4 phones, either the 12-button phones or the 24-button phones. And you see the 12-button phone kit is $1,075. 24-button kit is $1,175. So this is by far and away our best-selling kit right here, because you get the 24-button phones for only $100 more. And then we have a basic starter kit, which is the chassis with the CPU card in it. And your cost on that is $200. This would be your jumping off point if somebody is looking to build an all IP solution. All right. And then some support for you guys. Looking at the names of the people on here, I think you guys are all registered at our NTAC website. If not, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Go and register at nec.ntac.com. And that's our tech support site. for resellers only. Once you have your Tech ID number and set your password, you will have access to all of the technical documentation. It's all on this website in PDF format. You have access to our training videos. There are 16, I think we're up to 16 training videos, as well as our free online certification class. All right. And then you can create incident reports online, which we recommend doing if you're not in a time-critical situation. In other words, you're not on site trying to address a break-fix application. And then there's our tech support number for when you are on site trying to address a break-fix application and where time is more critical. All right. Then, because I'm a moving target, we have our sales support team. So if you can't get a hold of me, you can contact support, and they're helpful with some configuration and answering some basic feature questions. And then leasing, NEC Financial Services is available to you guys as well. And then our live trainings and webinars are listed on the NTAC site. All right. Here's our NEC Financial Services information. You could sign up to be, as a reseller, you could sign up at ned.neclease.com. Once you're signed up there and registered, you can create lease quotes on your own because all the current rate tables are there, as well as the current promotions. And you can submit credit apps online, and it just when you're signed up, you would then have the ability to, when you're quoting with your customers, you can quote a, for lack of a better term, a cash deal or a lease option for them as well. All right, and then here are the helpful people at NEC Financial Services who are ready to help you out with any leasing questions. All right, so to kind of wrap up, SL2100 is a very user-friendly system with a higher capacity for voice over IP, but it is a customizable system. It can be used as a traditional TDM system, it can be used as an IP solution, or it could be used as a hybrid solution. So where you're running both TDM and voice over IP simultaneously on the system. And it's easier to maintain with that slot-in design and the cards not stacking and everything accessible from the front of the cabinet makes it a much easier system to work on. All right? So you all have been awfully quiet, haven't interrupted me during the presentation. I want to make sure before I let you guys go that you don't have any questions. So open up any questions on anything we talked about. Questions?
I'm okay with it.
Concerns? All right, cool.
I'm good.
Thank you. All right. Well, then I would, I certainly appreciate you guys taking the time to join me this morning to learn more about the 2100. I will be sending out a copy of this presentation along with links to how you can listen to the recording again, if you would like to do so, so that some of the stuff that I went through fast, you will have this for your own reference. So again, I thank everybody for your time. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and go out and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.